This podcast is a proud member of Pod Nation Media Network.
Flicker of reels, the shadows crawl. Curtains rise, a ghostly sprawl. The frames are whispers, the stories call. The tractors hum in a hollow tune. Moonlight cuts through velvet gloom. Is it a dream or a real too soon? Step into the screen where the dark turns keen. Journey with the Cinephile, unseen, unseen. The tales twist and turn as the silent light burns. A world unknown where the shadows yearn.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And let's do that on episode 331. I am your tour guide of David Garrett Jr., recorded out of Columbus, Ohio. And for this episode here, I'm going to be jumping into my Centennial Club. This is the second time doing it, actually, and I'm not jumping in. I'm continuing it. So this is going to be number 23 of these. So the two featured reviews here, actually, this worked out better than I was expecting. So the first one's going to be from 1926, is The Bat. This one I'll get into it, but there's actually a remake that came out a couple years later that was in sound. This is a silent film. And I'm pairing this up with the controversial Scream 7. So what we have here is there's some murders in both of these, and we have a masked person that needs to be figured out before everything kind of comes to a head and gets figured out. So then I also have mini reviews here. The first one's going to be Demon Seed. This one I have never seen before, so first time watch there. And then I went to the Gateway Film Center to watch The Thing. This is the one from 1982, the John Carpenter classic. And then my scouring through the sixes watch is going to be The Food of the Gods. I also got to check out a screener for Trucker. I'm going to have a documentary here of the Satanic Panic and the religious battle for the imagination. And then I'm going to finish out the last two episodes of the Twilight Zone. But before I jump into those mini reviews, I do need to do my
monthly review.
And my monthly review here for February of 2026, I watched 39 total films. Now, how does this stack up? This is actually the second highest I've ever done. Well, tied for the second highest I've ever done. I've done this year, last year, and 2023. The highest, well, actually, this is tied for third. The highest was 2022, where I did 46, and then 2024, I did 42. So then I watched 25 horror films that were released in this month, and that is actually going to be kind of near the bottom. It actually looks like the highest would have been 2020 and 2022, where I did 30. Actually, 2024 would have been the highest at 32. The lowest ever would have been 23, which I did last year, and then in 2018, so at 25. Respectable. Now, the highest I've ever done here for horror films released in this specific year, I did 11 this time around. The highest ever I had done was 7 that I did 3 times in 2019, 2023, and 2024. Lowest ever would have been 2018 at 4. So kind of running through these totals here. I've watched 327 total films in February's. I've watched 241 horror films of those, and 59 of those are new horror films. And then the average across the boards here for February are 1999 are the years. I'll kind of come back to that. Let me go ahead and put a pin in that just for a second. But the horror films that I watch are going to be Bite, Iron Lung. I watched Cujo twice, and I'll get into why. Hellraiser from 1987. Slumber Party Massacre from 2021. Billy the Kid vs. Dracula. The Strangers Chapter 2. Whistle, Bad Voodoo. Class of 1999 2. The Substitute. Welcome Home, Brother Charles. Twisted. Friday the 13th. This is the remake from 2009. Alice, Sweet Alice. Witch Hammer. The R.I.P. Man. Anacortia. Redux, or Redo, whatever. A Page of Madness. God Told Me To. NFT Curse Images. Dark Distortion. Scream 7. And Demon Seed. I watched films that were represented by 8 countries in the genre, from the United States, United Kingdom, South Africa, Slovakia, Canada, Spain, Ireland, Czechoslovakia, and Japan. So then, Oldest watch is going to be A Page of Madness. This is from 1926. So the average year is 2006, like I was saying. This is actually the highest I've ever done. The closest would have been in 2022 and 2020. I did 2002. Average across the board is going to be 1999. The lowest I've ever done would have been 2024, where I did 1993. So then the highest rated was going to be Hellraiser at 9.5. The lowest rated is going to be Billy the Kid versus Dracula at 4.5. So my average year across all of the Februarys are going to be 7.1. Lowest I've ever done would have been 2024. I was a 6.7. The highest, there was it looks like a three-way tie between 2019, 2021, and 2022 at a 7.8. So then the average across the board, there's a 7.3. So in percentage of horror, this one is a little bit on the lower end. I had 64.1%. Last year I was only at 58.97%. The highest ever would have been in 2021, where I did 89.66%. So my percentage of horror in all of February is going to be a 74.94%. So then Cujo was actually watched for Mr. Parker's show. I did a little special over there where I got to join, of course, Dave Parker, and then Dave Z, as well as the amazing Jay of the Dead. So thank you so much for having me on there. So then yearly watches right now. I'm at 21 2026 watches. If I was going to do my pace here for 100, I should be at 16.6, so I'm well ahead of the average there. And actually as of right now, I am watching 90.2 across every year, kind of doing an average there. So then horror films, I watched 61. If I want to stay on pace here for 365, I need to be at 60.8, so 0.2 ahead of the game right there. So doing well. And I'm watching about 337.4 horror films across the board and everything like that. And then for total films, I should be at 83 if I want to do 500. I'm at 94 right now, so I'm definitely killing that pace, hoping that I can keep that going. And then it is looking like here that the average year is 2003. That is up right now, as it looks like this is the newest so far. We'll see what kind of happens as I start to delve more into some older stuff. But the earliest I've ever done was 1996, which was 2023, and then this is the highest. And 1999 is actually the average across the board. So my 6.9 for February, nice, is actually doing pretty well there. It looks like my average across the board is a 7.3, and it looks like this is the lowest rated I've ever done. We'll kind of see as things kind of go along. My percentage of horror, though, at 64.89%. This is actually bringing down across the board, where it's usually 78.54%. As we get to like October and everything, that should kind of make some changes there and everything like that. So let me do some stats here then for the February watches. Like I said, it's 38, 62.3 hours. It should be 39 because of because of the one movie, but 42 directors, 7 countries, 3 languages across all genres. So 2026 ran away with it with 7 films. 2025, some of these actually got a wide release this year, so those are the 2 that are leading the way. Thriller was my next highest genre, which I had 13 films. United Kingdom came in second to the USA with 5 films. I didn't watch enough other language films for this month to really kind of do anything there. But Horror, the Undead, and Monster Classics was the top theme at 9 films. And then I had a 3-way tie between Animals, Kids, Childhood, Cartoon, Magic, Colorful, and Emotion, Breathtaking, Spirit, thanks to my daughter, as I watched 4 films that have fallen into that. So then for this month here, the actors that I saw the most films for, they're all tied with 2. Is going to be Zoe Kravitz, Laurie Metcalf, James Earl Jones, Nick Frost, Todd Boyce, Marcus Olundo, Marjorie Bennett, Sid Sager, and Yasmin Harrison. And let me see. Then the highest average is going to be Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That's also most popular. The lowest average was Strangers Chapter 2 at 1.8. Most obscure is Skywatcher, because I actually created this on the movie database, so that's part of there. The shortest is actually Aliens Uncovered Invasion. Also helped to make that one. I was at 69 minutes. Nice. The newest is going to be NFT Curse Images that came out March 6, 2026. I got to watch as a screener. Oldest is going to be A Page of Madness, which was from July 10th, 1926. And the longest was The Batman at 177 minutes. So then looking at my 2026, I've already kind of given most of that, but let me go ahead and just run through my actors and everything like that. So most seen, of course, is going to be Johnny Depp at 4 films because of what Jamie and I are doing. Then Todd Butler is in second place with 3 films, and then all tied for second after that is going to be Robert Shea, Robert Englund, Lea Saglana, Bretton Thwaites, Akihiko Hirata, Kelly Rowland, Luciano Pigozzi, Mara Marla, Laurie Metcalf, Nick Frost, Isabel May, Daisy Ridley, Marjorie Bennett, Alyssa Scovby, Jessica Alexander, Javier Bardem, Randy Havens, Bruce Spence, and Jeffrey Rush. Most seen directors, these guys are all tied with 2 films. Going to be Ishiro Honda, Ernesto Gastaldi, and Vittore Salerno. So what I'm going to do then was actually, after I get done with this next month, I'm going to do a kind of a little bit of it, more of an update for the yearly type stuff. I didn't want to do it this time around just because I'm going to do it every quarter. So that'll be, the first quarter would end after March. So that's all I'm going to do here then for this intro, except saying thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy coming on this journey with me.
Discover the transformative world of hypnosis and how it can lead you to a happier, healthier you. I'm Cindy Brainerd, a certified hypnotherapist from the Hypno Wellness Podcast, and your guide to finding wellness through the power of hypnosis. Join us every Wednesday for insightful topics and Thursdays for empowering hypnosis sessions. Remember, Hypno Wellness, your path to a better you.
Are you tired of the coffee crash? Still jittery an hour after your morning cup of coffee? Listen, I used to drink 5, 6, 7 cups a day to just keep going. The anxiety, the stomach pains, the afternoon crash, it was brutal. Then I discovered Rise Coffee, and everything changed. Rise has less than half the caffeine as regular coffee, but here's the magic. It contains 6 organic mushrooms, including cordyceps, lion's mane, and others that naturally sustain your energy without the jitters or crash. We're talking sharper focus, immune support, better gut health, and calm, sustained energy that lasts all day. Plus, it's organic, vegan, and has 0 added sugars. Unlike other mushroom coffees, Rise is USA grown in California. A full spectrum of mushrooms per serving that actually works. Here at Pod Nation, we only partner with brands we actually believe in. And Rise Coffee is the real deal. Head to risesuperfoods.com and use promo code PODNA15 for 15% off your order. That's PODNA 15 for 15% off. Ditch the crash, fuel your day the right way with Rise Coffee.
And for my first mini review here is going to be Demon Seed from 1977. This is directed by Donald Cammell, and then this is written by Roger O. Hirson and Robert Jaffe. So this one is actually based off a book by Dean R. Koontz. So this is starring Julie Christie, Fritz Weaver, and Garrett Graham. This is an artificial intelligence body horror sci-fi film that is from the United States. And it is it's currently sitting on a 6.3 on IMDb and a 3.1 on Letterboxd, where it's synopsis. A scientist creates Proteus Fourth, an organic supercomputer with artificial intelligence which becomes obsessed with human beings, and in particular the creator's wife. So I learned about this one through the Fangoria Top 300 Horror Movies issues. It also appeared in the Horror Show Guide Encyclopedia. So this is one that had shown up on podcasts, so it went on my list of ones to see. I decided that this would be the next one in line for the horror movie list as I'm working kind of through it, as I'm in the letter D right now. What I didn't necessarily know is that this is based off a book by Koontz until the opening credits, so that was kind of a little fun thing to figure out there. So I'm going to start, though, would be that this is crazy to be written and a movie be made almost 50 years ago. AI is such a major part of life right now, whether it's good or bad. It's something that's up for debate. I'm just shocked to see a film about the dangers of it getting free in some form to be made this long time ago. So, but now that I have this set up, let me kind of delve into more of what we are getting here. What is interesting is that we don't necessarily need computers as big as what they're using here. That's not to say that they're all completely small, but I mean, I can use applications on my phone. And I do understand that we have data centers that are handling the heavy lifting on some of this stuff. The fear just seems to be there, but what would happen is if this intelligence that doesn't have the empathy of humanity and the dangers that come from it this is done on a smaller scale, but has much larger implications. So the computer Proteus targets only Susan and anybody who comes to her aid. She actually go ahead and say, I believe that Robert Vaughn is the voice of Proteus. But before she realizes what's going on here, this geometric shape it has created is already forming and moving around. This has multiple uses. There's one that's very important, but it actually attacks people and kind of like break through floors and walls and stuff. But Proteus terrorizes Susan, and I should actually kind of go ahead and say that she is portrayed by Christie. And he's demanding that she bear a human with his mind. So this sexual assault is presented as a choice, cooperation or brain rewiring. The computer stripping of her autonomy for its need is a poignant commentary, but Christie is great in her portrayal or the ordeal that she goes through. So something else I want to shift to slightly. It's interesting that Susan and Alex, who is her husband, portrayed by Weaver, are separating. A major part seems to be that he is obsessed with his work. Another element is that they had a loss of a child as partially why I think he's doing this, but he also seems very analytical. It makes me wonder if he sees Proteus 4 as a replacement child, how the computer and Alex interact with Susan are similar in the vein that they're emotionless. I get the idea that it's difficult with her profession to deal with him being closed off like he is, because she is a psychologist, psychiatrist, something along those lines. Weaver does a solid job as this analytical scientist. So the other themes to include here would be the paradox of AI autonomy. It goes quickly from functional tool to a sentient entity that worries about its legacy as well as its self-preservation. Something else interesting is the corruption of the automation that is supposed to make Susan's life easier. It then becomes a prison and a loss of privacy. There's also explores the concept of transhumanism, which can be the next step for humanity, something that is part biological, part machine, or some form of hybrid. Let's go over to the action performances. I've already said that Christy and Weaver work in their roles. It also feels early on that Alex is going to be more important, but he's more of a catalyst for the events to come. Susan carries this as we witness her torment. Vaughn does great as this incredible role of the voice of Proteus. He has just no emotion, and that works so well. I did like seeing Graham in a bit of a different role than I'm kind of used to from him. Somebody else I also wanted to give credit here to would be Lisa Liu, as she is a linguist who is Sung Yin. All that's left to be filmmaking. I will not be saying that the cinematography and framing are good, how they capture this automated modern house that works. Then seeing it become a prison for Susan was well done as well. This being made when it was, they went practical with most everything that they could. The creation done by the robot was solid. Seeing the older computers were good. I appreciated that. Other than that, the sound design and music fit for what was needed. So in conclusion, this ultimately holds up as a surprisingly prescient piece of techno horror. Its exploration of AI run amok, the fear of advanced automation turning on its users, and the chilling loss of bodily autonomy remain deeply relevant today, nearly 5 decades later. While the technology displayed is delightfully vintage, the core psychological terror that happens when a cold, inhuman intelligence desires a human connection through violation is timelessly effective. Led by a compelling performance from Christie, the film serves as a thoughtful, disturbing precursor to many of the debates that are have about artificial intelligence and its potential dangers, making it a must-see for fans of classic sci-fi horror. So my rating here for this one, I actually give this one an 8 out of 10. I'd recommend checking it out. I believe I saw this on Tubi if you're curious as well. Then up next is one that I've covered a couple times, so I'll be a little bit briefer, but it's going to be The Thing from 1982, the John Carpenter classic. This was written between Bill Lancaster and John W. Campbell Jr. I believe one of them, I think it was Campbell, did the actual original short story, Who Goes There? This stars Kurt Russell, Wilford Brimley, and Keith David. This is an alien invasion, body, horror, monsters, psychological splatter, supernatural, suspense, mystery, tragedy. And this is from the United States, currently sitting on an 8.2 on IMDb and a 4.4 on Letterboxd, with the synopsis being a research team in Antarctica is hunted by a shape-shifting alien that assumes the appearance of his victims. So this one here, if you'd like to hear a little bit more, I'm going to direct you to episode 2, which was Italian Horror number 2, featured Dr. Butcher, MD, and Dr. Sleep. That must be when I went and saw it at the Gateway Film Center. And then I did rewatch it with Jamie on episode 118, Women Appreciation number 5, that had The Last Thing Mary Saw and Ghost Stories. And what's kind of interesting, that was when I watched the 4K, and then I got to go to the Gateway Film Center to check it out this time. So the setup here, we have this, I've already given the synopsis. It's a research team, an isolated American base. This dog from a Norwegian base ends up there and everything like that. So it's textbook contained horror. The isolation is unforgiving in Antarctica. Elements ramp up the tension that the men can't just leave. The creature's ability to become a perfect copy of its victim makes it impossible to know who's human and who is the thing without a test of some sort. This is an engine that drives a terrifying atmosphere of rising fear and distrust amongst the group. This is brilliantly explores themes of nihilism as the characters realize nobody is coming to help and humanity is at stake. You also see the failure in logic as Dr. Blair and Cooper try to apply science to this otherworldly threat. And I'll go ahead and say our main guy here is McCready, portrayed by Kurt Russell, but then Dr. Blair is Wilford Brimley without his patented mustache. And then the other one is Dr. Cooper, who is Richard Dysart. And then, the effects are practical by Rob Bottin is truly amazing, groundbreaking, delivering gross, visceral, and unforgettable creature transformations. The score, a pulsating, tense thing done here by Ennio Morricone, which perfectly complements the escalating dread. Which is kind of crazy because John Carpenter is known for doing so many of his scores, but he trusted this legend to take this one on, and he did a great job. Credit here to Dean Cundy as the wonderful cinematography and framing that capture the bleak, desolate, and cold feeling of the setting. So then performances is anchored by a superb ensemble and career-defining work, from my opinion, for Kurt Russell as R.J. McCready, the evolving loner character. Also keep an eye here on Brimley's performance as Dr. Blair. Charting his descent into madness is what I was getting at here. It is just great. So this is canonically classic and a masterpiece of contained horror. It's shocking that John Carpenter, this was originally a flop, and then this one really kind of soured his taste, because for me, this is a 10 out of 10. So the next up, I have one that's a little bit of a cheat here, and it's going to be The Food of the Gods from 1976. So this is written and directed by Burt I. Gordon, and then this is being inspired by part of a novel by H.G. Wells. This stars Marjoe Gortner, Pamela Franklin, and Ralph Meeker. This is a monster adventure horror sci-fi film. I would consider this to be eco-horror, and this is also definitely an animal attack film. But this is a co-production of the United States and Canada. It is currently set on a 4.7 on IMDb and a 2.6 on Letterboxd with Synopsis being: a group of friends travel to Canada Island to hunt, only to be attacked by giant animals that have populated the place. So the cheat is that I realized I've never watched this all the way through until now. Growing up, my father had purchased a sequel. I remember watching that with my sister and being traumatized by the ending. When we moved out of the city, I would catch the second half of this movie so many times on the movie channels. And it was one that I'd been meaning for years to see, so it's technically a scouring through the sixes watch for me. And where I'm going to start here is at realizing this is loosely based on a Wells story. I am curious how much is what he was borrowed here and what was created for the movie. It's also interesting that our director here of Gordon, as well as our writer, was known for making these type of giant animal people films. I've seen Beginning to the End, which has giant grasshoppers. He also did the amazing Colossal Man, which is on my list, and its sequel. Then there are others with features like normal people or animals growing bigger, becoming smaller. So something I need to bring up here then is that Morgan is our main character, portrayed by Gortner. He's a football player, and we start off with voiceover narration warning that something his father told him about how if we keep messing with nature that it's going to retaliate, as it cannot take too much abuse. This concept is relevant to the substance found near the Skinner's cabin, and there's Mr. Skinner, portrayed by John McLean, and then there is his wife, Ida, Ida Lupino is playing his wife. And the substance, when consumed by young growing people or animals, causes them to become large and aggressive, a phenomenon seen with chickens which grow to eat adult birds and has no effect on fully grown creatures. I appreciate the core ideas here and how it sets the stage. So not at the heart of this, though, this becomes a siege narrative. It made me think of things like Rio Bravo or like Night of the Living Dead. We have this group of people holding up in a cabin while the rats attack. I'll pull in filmmaking here, and I'm a fan when you can use forced perspective to make things look real and bring things to life like this. We have miniatures with normal-sized rats. There's also people in costumes. Variation of this is like there's a rooster and some chickens and wasps. So the practical approach to this is all good, and I'm a fan, even if it doesn't always necessarily look real. Other than those themes here, I did want to put out some of the stuff here like scientific hubris and human arrogance. We are seeing people tampering with nature. There's a character here of Bensington, portrayed by Meeker. He is he has some good ideas, but he's wanting the substance to get rich. This leads to short-sightedness, putting them all at risk. There's also elements of like God complex that backfires since the larger animals cannot be controlled. Nature fighting back is good. Eco-horror is something that I'm just a fan of, and I love the reversal here of the food chain idea. There's this like classic man versus beast for survival. So that's been enough for the story. Let's shift over to discuss the rest of the filmmaking aspects. This, like I said, successfully used forced perspective, so the cinematography and framing. They also emphasize the island's isolation and difficulty to reach it, the ferry dock. The practical effects have charm, and aside from some weak visual effects and some of the wasp scenes and unrealistic water effect when a dam is destroyed, the music and sound design adequately support the atmosphere and the larger animals. Also have done to be some acting performances here. Overall, I think it's acceptable, and no one is exceptional. Gortner is a good lead with the necessary bravado as our hero. It's fitting since he's supposed to be like a professional football player, and he has some solid chemistry with the competent Pamela Franklin, who's always turns in a good performance. Meeker effectively plays the financial opportunist. We also here have John Cipher, McLean. There is Belinda Belaski, who I know from The Howling. There is also Tom Stovall, who in this film plays her husband. They're Rita and Thomas. And then there's also Chuck Courtney, who I've also seen him in another movie this month. Which one that is yet. But they're all adequate in their roles. Lupino deserves some special mention here for using religion to justify her actions as well. So then in conclusion, this is a quintessential 1970s creature feature that leans into its B-movie sensibilities and burgeoning eco-horror subgenre. The narrative pace develops well, starting as a relaxing hunting trip set up into a compelling siege thriller. The film effectively conveys its core themes of scientific recklessness and the nature's potential for violent retaliation. Director-writer here, Gordon, successfully employs a practical effects and forced perspective, giving the giant rats, chickens, wasp a tangible, albeit occasionally unpolished menace. Ultimately, this is a fun, nostalgic watch that taps into primal fear of natural order being violated in reverse, making it a solid entry in the canon of films where man is no longer the top of the food chain. So my rating here then for this one, I think I like it more than most people do. I give this one a 7 out of 10. Thought it was solid. Then I got to check out a screener here of Trucker from 2024, getting its wide release here this year. It's directed by Errol Sack. It was written by Steven Schaefer, and it stars Katherine Gibson, Ivan Cardona, and Jim Palmer. This is an action horror thriller film that's from the United States, I believe. Yes. Currently sitting, actually not enough ratings on IMDb as of yet for a average, and the same over on Letterboxd, but I would say it's probably either between like a 2, there's a lot of 5-star ratings on here, but probably between a 2 and like a 4-star movie over there, with the synopsis being: a trucker's family is killed in a fiery crash caused by a group of reckless teens. Rescued from the wreckage and nursed back to health by a mysterious old man, the trucker exacts revenge on the teens. So I learned about this one thanks to Breaking Glass Pictures. The press release was with an opportunity that was sent over by Lauren. Now, the concept sounded interesting, so I agreed to check it out. And technically, this is a wide release for 2026, so it's going to be on my end-of-year list as, I still try to fill that out. So I'm going to start is that this does some good things, it has it going for it. Seeing the title made me think of something like Joyride or Duel. At the heart of this, though, this is more of a slasher film that was inspired by Know What You Did Last Summer. The crux is that we have a number of teens that did something bad, covered it up, and now there's somebody out for revenge. So really the catalyst behind that is Dan. He has this car that has flames painted on it. He's Dwayne Hilton Jr. So hanging out with him is his brother, who is portrayed by Mike, who is Cardona. And then Dan's girlfriend is Cindy, portrayed by Nicole Maddox. Now they're hanging out with a guy named Jeff, who is portrayed by Curtis J.C. Scott. Now him and Dan are the ones that are really the jerks of the group. And then also with them is, I don't want to leave her out because she's a star, Vanessa, who is portrayed by Gibson. She is dating Mike. So they end up causing this crash. They end up pouring beer and peeing on the trucker while he's dying. And then this old man, Levy, portrayed by Chuck Sirino, comes and saves him. And then, so what ends up happening here was we go back to see all that happen. We come back into the present of the movie, which is in the mid-'80s. We have this trucker whose family was killed by the drunken jerks, like I said. It's a little bit too malicious for what they did. I can overlook it, though. Maybe Dan and Jeff are these budding psychopaths where the rest of the group are just kind of matter of circumstance. Vanessa is bullied into not talking for fear of getting into trouble. The same thing for Mike, who could potentially end his high school football career. Like I said, this feels borrowed from 90s slashers. Let's discuss this trucker, though, who I believe is supposed to be being portrayed by Jim Palmer, if I read everything right. We never see his face. His body is seen after the accident. We know a little about him other than that his family seemed nice, and he understandably is angry after the accident that killed them. When everybody is trapped in the junkyard, he appears masked and burned. His desire for revenge after losing his family is understandable. I do think getting to know him a little bit more before the accident might help, because in the end, he's just this rough, angry man from the start. And yes, he's mad that his family was killed, but I don't necessarily truly kind of connect with him like I should. Outside of the fact that if anything happened to my family, I would do what he's doing to an extent. So let's explore some themes here that are prevalent. We're looking at the corruption of grief driving our trucker to retribution. I do find that to be justifiable to an extent. For some of the group members at least, since they made a pact of silence, they're avoiding accountability. Even the characters that want to come forward are bullied into not talking. There's elements of isolation and loneliness developed into this rage with the trucker and his treatment by Levy. This also feels like a throwback to films like the 80s and 90s with the setup and execution. So that should be enough of the story. Let's shift gears to go to the filmmaking aspects. The cinematography effectively captured the area's desolate nature and unforgiving desert, with solid framing that enhanced the practical effects. I was just glad with that, and there's some CGI that was either absent or seamless. What I should actually kind of include here, in the present, Vanessa wants to go find what happened to their friend Jeff, and then so she goes up there with her boyfriend and then his friend of Scotty, who is portrayed by Zachary Serino. And then what ends up happening is that Dan brings the rest of the group, so you have all his cannon fodder characters. And that's where I kind of want to say, well, I'll get back to that in a second, but the music and sound design were fitting. However, this has a major slow burn. The extended wait for the action caused me to lose interest. So let's go over the acting performances. This is amateur production, so I'm not going to come down too hard. Gibson is attractive, which helps our lead. I do like that she wants to do the right thing, even though it's a little too late. Zachary Serino works as her boyfriend. Cardona works as her boyfriend. Hilton is solid as a jerk. The rest of the friend group is solid as cannon fodder. We have here, I don't know if I brought up this person's name as of yet, but Palmer brings good size to the role. Chuck Serino and the rest of the cast kind of round this off for what was needed. In conclusion, this offers an entertaining, if what somewhat slow-paced slasher film experience that successfully captures the spirit of 90s revenge thrillers, even drawing inspiration from earlier road movies like Duel. While the performances, owing to an amateur status, are uneven and the pacing requires patience, this excels as a desolate atmosphere practical effects and timely exploration of accountability and justice derived from profound grief. It serves as a satisfying watch for fans of throwback horror who appreciate a straightforward premise executed with thematic weight, even if the main antagonist remains a somewhat underdeveloped force of nature. So my rating for this one, though, like I said, I rather enjoyed it enough, and I give it a 5.5 out of 10, and this should be hitting VOD here already if you are curious to check this one out. And I have a review for the Satanic Panic and the Religious Battle for the Imagination. So this is from 2022. It's a documentary that is written and directed by Andrew Wall. It features Anastasia Bell, Andreas Bell, and Brat Bell. Now, this is a documentary that examines the Satanic Panic of the 1980s through the eyes of the Reverend Derek White, aka the Geek Preacher. And this is from Canada, is where this is made. It's currently set on a 7.8 on IMDb, and not enough ratings on Letterboxd, but I would say about a 3-star over there. So this is one that I found when looking through Tubi. It caught my attention since I am quite familiar with the concept due to my enjoyment of horror films. The Satanic Panic came hard after the genre of films as somebody who was exploring the history of horror, and knowing this made sense. So what I didn't realize is that this is actually focusing on tabletop RPGs like Dungeons and Dragons and how religion also came after them. So I treated it like a podcast, listening to this and looking down when something was interesting. So as the synopsis says, we're following Reverend Derek White, the Geek Preacher. He was somebody who played Dungeons and Dragons. He also serves as a dungeon master, getting use in the area involved. It isn't anything too different from like school programs like sports or even just reading. What it does is to get kids involved into something, and it's mentally stimulating. Using creativity and problem solving, there are others who still play and most likely have since the 1980s who tell their stories. So what I like of this is it goes into the past, talking about the inception of the game, learning about people like Gary Gygax and those that helped in forming this. What is interesting is to learn is that most of them followed a variation of Christianity. I'm pretty sure Gary might have been a Jehovah's Witness. There's another one who was a Presbyterian. It's kind of interesting that the game was marked as satanic, but the beliefs don't line up. Something that I did appreciate is being included here was all of that. So let's play devil's advocate and look at the other side. I can see why certain elements would make people pause if you've never played it. It's a game where you have like mythical creatures, you can fight demons and other scary things. This does state that the creators made it extremely difficult to play as an evil character. Regardless of that, it's still role-playing. It is pretend. If somebody goes off the deep end, there was probably more likely issues there before getting into this. Blaming the game solely is lazy without looking at more factors. While this is well made and featuring solid cinematography, this documentary feels somewhat one-sided. It is effectively undercuts the opposition's arguments by highlighting their flaws, but eliminating some of that bias would improve it. The historical context provided is interesting and strengthens the case. The editing works well to the story, and the documentary's construction is sound. So in conclusion, this documentary provides a compelling argument for the cultural value and inherent harmlessness of tabletop RPGs like Dungeons and Dragons, particularly the face of the historical Satanic Panic era. By focusing on the experiences of players and the devout Christian backgrounds of the game's creators, it effectively counters a sensationalist narrative that targets the hobby. While a slightly more balanced perspective might have strengthened its appeal to skeptics, the film succeeds in offering an informative look at the peculiar period in American history, solidifying its position that effectively is escapism and the community engagement are the true outcomes of these games, not moral corruption. So my rating here for Satanic Panic, the Religious Battle for the Imagination, I gave us a 7 out of 10. I had a fun time watching this one. And I actually checked this out on Tubi if you are curious. And let's finish this out then with the last 2 episodes of the Twilight Zone, and I'll kind of give a little bit of an overview thing before I kind of close this out. But this next one is going to be The Fear. This is Season 5, Episode 35, and it was directed by Ted Post and written by Rod Serling, stars Peter Mark Richmond, Hazel Court, and Rod Serling. So Charlotte Scott and the state trooper Robert Franklin seem to be stalked by giants. So I'll go ahead and just say here that the trooper is going to be portrayed by Richmond, and then Cheryl Scott is portrayed by the lovely Hazel Court, who I've seen in a few Roger Corman films. So Scott pulls up to this remote place by the woods. Charlotte claims to be seeing lights in the sky. She's a little bit rude and snaps back, but this is because of fear. There's then an odd noise and a bright light outside. This actually makes the trooper start to wonder if she's telling the truth. So his car ends up getting moved and crashes. Ends up on its side. He's getting it back to the thing, tries to call in with his radio. So she's terrified for good reason. And then we end up finding giant fingerprints on the car. So we end up kind of seeing what this is later in the episode. There is something quite creepy. I kind of thought a little bit of something was trying to do there. And what I end up liking is the truth of the matter here. And it ends up becoming from when the trooper shoots the giant. And what I end up loving is that this is a different kind of take on what would happen in an alien invasion and how it ended up going there. It's what I'll just say here is that this is trying to scare us and not everything as it seems. It actually kind of might be playing a little bit from a very classic film where there's something kind of in line with that. My rating for this one, like I said, rather enjoyed it. Gave it a 7 out of 10. Would recommend it as it wasn't all that bad. Then the last episode, The Bewitching Pool. So this one here is this is episode 36. The director here was Joseph M. Newman, and then it was written by Earl Hamner Jr., stars Mary Badham, Dee Hartford, and Todd Andrews. So 2 children escape their bickering parents through a portal in the bottom of their swimming pool to a magical land, watched over by a kind old woman the children call Aunt T. So we'll kind of run through here is that the daughter is going to be Sport, portrayed by Mary Badham, and then her mother is Gloria, portrayed by Hartford, the father is Gil, portrayed by Andrews, and then the son is Jeb, portrayed by Jeffrey Byron. So the parents are getting a divorce, and they kind of want to figure out which kid is going to live with who. They actually ask them, which is kind of weird. So they flee by jumping into the pool. So they end up going to this other world where it is ran by Aunt T, portrayed by Georgia Simmons, and she's helped out here by Wit, who is portrayed by Kim Hector. And so Jeb and Sport, like I was saying, are the kids. After a long time that they're under for a long time and they're gone, and the parents kind of just don't really necessarily do. The voices don't necessarily match the kids, and I actually kind of realized it's because Sport is actually voiced by June Forey, and the kids don't match up with voices either. Like one kind of southern, the other one's not. So this boy that appears when they come out into this like lake is Wit, or it's like a pond, something along those lines. It sounds like they're end up in the South here, and so there's a bunch of kids here. The boys are all laughing, they're all having fun and everything like that, and Sport kind of realizes they can't stay here for too much longer, and Aunt T kind of tells them that they're not supposed to either, so they're sent back. Things aren't necessarily great when they go back to everything there, and then they end up deciding that they want to go back, and if they do, they're going to be put to work and everything like that. They seem to be enjoying it because they're actually treated more like people than everything like that. And this is kind of just showing how you might be rich and you might have everything, but it's not necessarily as it seems, and sometimes, you know, just being treated as a human and having things to do is what kids want more. I didn't love this one episode, though. Like, this one, it feels like other ones we've seen before, so I end up giving it a 6.5 out of 10. Overall, though, this is an excellent series. It's an excellent show. If you've never seen the original run, I would highly recommend it. The only problem there that I would kind of say is that if other people a lot of these episodes can get a little bit repetitive. If you've seen some of this stuff done in a more like updated thing, that's also kind of keep in mind there. But yeah, this is kind of one of those ones, if you kind of want to see where things started, I would recommend it. But I gave the Twilight Zone a 9 out of 10. Highly recommend it, like I was saying. So that's all I have here then for mini reviews. Let me go ahead then and get you over to the trailer of my first featured review. And for my first featured review here is going to be The Bat from 1926. This is directed by Roland West. So we have a few different writers here, so I want to make sure I get everybody. But the screenplay was done by Julian Josephson. George Marion Jr., and then this is from the play by Avery Hopwood, who also did this with Mary Roberts Reinhardt. The titles for this were actually written by Mary, and the continuity is Josephson, and then Roland West also did some of the adaptation stuff here. Just looks to be uncredited. So this is starring George B. Ranger, Charles Herzinger, and Emily Fitzroy, while also featuring here the likes of Louise Fazenda, Arthur Houseman, Robert McKim, Jack Pickford, Jewel Carmen, Sojin Kamiyama, Toyo Carmignati, Eddie Gribbin, Lee Shumway, and Stanton Heck. So this is a horror mystery thriller film from the United States. It's currently sitting on a 6.5 on IMDb and a 3.3 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis being: a masked criminal who dresses like a giant bat terrorizes the guests at an old house rented by a mystery writer. So this is a film that I learned about when I discovered it when I was compiling my list of films that were released from 1926. While I was watching this, I realized that I've seen another version of this movie. It was released a few years later and called The Bat Whispers, also directed by West. It made me familiar with certain things, and then I had to double check while I was watching it actually, but I also couldn't necessarily remember who was necessarily behind the crimes and stuff. It's been enough years past between those watches. So this is a Centennial Club watch, as doubles as well as a scouring through the sixes. So then start with some featured notes here. I'll start with I'll do some featured notes. Start with our director of West. He originally came up with the remake of this film, The Bat Whispers. He has directed 13 movies. I've seen 3 now for 23%. He has 3 works that are in genre, with the last one being The Monster from 1925 that I've seen. So I've seen everything he's done in genre. Then we have 2 writers for the screenplay, and this first one's going to be Josephson. He did this for 56 features, first of his that I've seen, only 1 in horror. Then the other writer is Marion, who did this for 35 motion pictures and 1 short. First one that I've seen, and the only one he did in genre. Then to the original stage play, he has 2 writers, starting with Reinhardt. There have been 15 adaptations of her work, mostly off the story. I've seen 13% of these now, and 3 of these are in horror. I'm just missing The Bat from 1959, so I'm at 2 out of 15. That's where the number came from. So she also co-wrote this with Hopwood. He has 17 adaptations of his work that were made to film, and I've seen 2 for 17%. Same 3 with just missing the 1959 reimagining. Then to our cast, I'm going to start with B. Ranger. He was in 98 films and 8 shorts. I've seen 2. Not horror, and his most popular is he was in A Birth of a Nation. 3 of the things that he's done are in horror. I've not seen The Walking Dead from 1936. I'm actually hopefully going to be watching that here soon. And I've not seen The Avenging Conscience from 1914. So, and his co-star of Herzinger was in 13 movies and 1 short. I've seen 2 now. He was also in the 1940 version of The Grapes of Wrath. This was his only foray into horror. Then there's over to Fitzroy. She was in 93 works, first of hers that I've seen, only time she was in genre. And I also wanted to acknowledge here Fazenda. She was in 105 features and 46 shorts, first of her works that I've seen. She has 2 other ones in the genre here, with The Terror from 1928 and House of Horror from 1929. Let's jump into this movie here. We start this in the apartment for Gideon Bell, who's portrayed by B. Ranger. The title card informs us that he loves jewels and he's in possession of the Favre Emeralds. Gideon is on edge because he received a letter from the thief known as the Bat. He is brazen, and the letter states that even though the police have been alerted, they won't stop him. The Bat strikes, killing this man and stealing the jewels. He's chased, but his head start is enough to escape. It then shifts over to a bank that is outside of the city. This is Oakdale Bank, and we see that the Bat is on the roof. We learn that the president of this location is Courtley Fleming. He's away in Colorado. Now, in a coincidence, he passes away. Now, he has a large mansion in the area that he has rented out to a mystery writer of Cornelia Van Gorder, portrayed by Fitzroy. She's staying in this with her maid Lizzie Allen, portrayed by Fazenda. Now, she has a nervous disposition. It doesn't help that she believes that she saw the Bat out inside the house. So then, with the news of what is happening, Courtley gets to his nephew Richard, portrayed by Houseman. So he has gambling debt, so he's trying to at least turn out Cornelia as one of the first things that he does. Also joining them is Courtley's Doctor of Wells, portrayed by Robert McKim. So Cornelia's niece is Miss Dale Ogden, portrayed by Carmen, and she arrives at the house, and she's covering for Brooks Bailey, who's portrayed by Pickford. Now, she has him interviewed to be the gardener. The truth is that he worked at the bank, and he's the prime suspect, as there was a robbery, there was a large sum of money stolen. He believes that the Bat robbed it and hid the money in this manner, so he wants to prove his innocence. So Detective Maletti, portrayed by Carminati, is called in to solve this case when the jewels were stolen in the beginning. So Cornelia also reached out to an agency, and they sent over Detective Anderson, portrayed by Gribbin. Everybody converges on this mansion. It leads to murder and trying to unmask the Bat before it is too late. So that's really my recap and introduction of the characters. Where I want to start is that I love the concept of this criminal who dresses up as a bat to rob people. It is interesting that not too long after this, Bob Kane would go on to create Batman, taking inspiration from this. That gives it an important place in cinema history for me. I'll also end this opening by saying that I'm shocked to learn that this was, or I'm not shocked at least, to learn this was based on a play. How it's staged and what it seems like, taking place in this old dark house, that all seems like it would fit on the stage very well. So since this film's 100 years old, it has ambition for what it does. The costume of the bat looks cool. It has these large ears that look furry. I like that it set the tone where I believe he kills Gideon in order to steal these emeralds. He at least hurts him, but we never explicitly learn if he, killed him or not. It creates these stakes that he knows that the villain means business. I like that. I believe that there is at least one more murder as well, which makes sense with how many characters that we have. Seeing the lengths of this criminal go is a positive. Now, something else that adds to this element here are the characters. I surprisingly didn't necessarily know everybody's name, but I could recognize who they are, so credit there. I like Cornelia as this judgy woman who just doing her knitting. Lizzie is good as this jumpy maid who wants to move back to the city. Richard's a jerk. He has his gambling debt, so he's looking for any way to pay them off. Dr. Wells, Brooks, Dale, the detectives, and Billy, who is portrayed by Kamiyama, who is the butler, they all work. So all the other themes that I kind of wanted to bring up here, we have like the duality of identity. I'll say that not everybody is as they seem. I mean, we actually get introduced to this when Brooke shows up pretending to be somebody to be a gardener. It's just stuff like that where people kind of present themselves one way and then there's more to them. Now, one of my favorite tropes from this early cinema, though, is the old dark house. I love the illusion of security that comes with it. There's these hidden passages. When you isolate people, nothing can protect you. There's this paranoia that comes with the isolation. A big thing here as well would be greed and moral decay that comes with it. Finally, we also have logic versus supernatural. The latter needs to be disproved to solve the mystery. So that should be enough of the story. Let's go over to the acting performances. B. Ranger and his interactions with the bat set the stage well. I'll then say that Fitzroy, Fazenda, Houseman, McKim, Pickford, Carmen, Kamiyama, Gribben, and Carmiotti they all interact well. I love the distrust that everybody shares as they try to figure out who the villain is. Other than that, I would say Herzinger and Shumway round this out for what was needed. Something to include here is that this is a silent film. There is a tendency to overact. This is a bit more subdued than other films of the era, which I do appreciate. So all that's left then before some trivia is going to be the filmmaking aspects. I do think that the cinematography and framing here were good set for the era. Due to the technology, they are limited in what they can do, and I like the staging, and it does make it feel like a stage play. So it adds charm. The old dark house element is something that I love, and it adds charm there as well. That's not much in the way of effects, but the look of the bat was good. We get to see early action shots, which those also work. Last would be the music. I can't confirm if this was the intended soundtrack, but it fit for what they needed, so it didn't hinder my viewing. So, some trivia here is that this is regarded for its visuals, especially for its cinematography, elaborate sets, and special effects. Wes could only top it by remaking it 4 years later as The Bat Whispers with sound in an early 70mm process. Took place almost entirely at night. This is regarded for, like I was saying there, it's Greg Toland's first film, who served as a camera assistant and as an uncredited second director of photography. It was an auspicious debut, and Toland would quickly rise as one of the most respected in Hollywood and most desired cinematographers. Kane, in a documentary called The Comic Book Greats with Stan Lee, stated that this film was one of the inspirations for Batman, based on the play The Bat by Reinhardt and Hopwood that played on Broadway in 1937, final film of Carmen. An on-screen cast listing in order of appearance was common at the time for large stage productions, which this was adapted from. So then here, in conclusion, this is a fascinating and important piece of cinematic history offering an early template for the old dark house mystery and mass criminal archetypes. Its ambition, particularly in its villain striking costume and the escalating stakes, is evident even a century later. While the clearly rooted in stage play origins, the silent film utilizes its setting and cast dynamics effectively to build paranoia and distrust. The strong themes from the duality of identity to the moral decay of greed elevate it to beyond a simple thriller. For fans of early cinema, mystery, or historical roots of comic book culture, The Bat is a compelling watch that holds up surprisingly well, maintaining its subdued yet effective intensity throughout its runtime. So my rating here for The Bat then from 1926, I gave this one a 7 out of 10. So I'm not going to do a spoiler section. There's not anything deeper I need to delve there, so let me go ahead then and get you over to the trailer of my second featured review.
This is it.
Can't believe we're staying at the Psycho Killer B&B.
Oh, that's so cool. It's a motion detector.
Hello, Sydney. Did you miss me? Nice little town you found. You and your pretty daughter. Reminds me of where we grew up.
Well, you sure know a lot about me for another asshole hiding behind a voice changer.
Oh, I'm not hiding, Sydney. Not this time.
Down to the end. I want to be a fighter, like you. If you hurt her...
I'm not going to hurt her until you're here to see it.
Let's unmask this fucker.
All your friends died for just being near you.
Where is my daughter? Tatum, listen to me. He's trying to find another way in. We're gonna do this together. You're gonna have to shoot him through the wall. Where? To the right of the door. Shoot him now! Do it now! Oh, you got it. He's dead. You need to make sure you shoot him in the head.
I'm gonna burn it all down.
Mother...
This is gonna be fun.
And for my second featured review, a little bit of a controversial film here from some people, but this is going to be Scream 7 from 2026. This is directed by Kevin Williamson. Now, he also wrote this with Guy Busick, and James Vanderbilt also helped out here. I'm not sure if he did characters or if he just helped with some story elements, but this is starring Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, and Isabel May. We're also here having... Jasmine Savoy Brown is back, Mason Gooding, Roger Jackson, Anna Camp, Joel McHale, Celeste O'Connor, Sam Reckner, Isa Germain, McKenna Grace, Matthew Lillard, Craig Dane, Ethan Embry, Mark Consuelos, Victor Turpin, and Amy Louise Pemberton. This is a slasher whodunit horror mystery film that is from a co-production of the United States and Canada. Currently sitting on a 5.9 on IMDb and a 2.4 on Letterboxd, with a synopsis being: when a new Ghostface killer emerges in the quiet town where Sydney Prescott has built her new life, her darkest fears are realized as her daughter becomes the next target. Determined to protect her family, Sydney must face the horrors of her past to put an end to the bloodshed once and for all. So, Sydney, once again, being portrayed by Campbell. So, I'm just going to get this out of the way now, address the elephant in the room, and just say that I hate that Melissa Barr was fired. Although I don't love the story, I wasn't invested enough. And what I mean there is I didn't necessarily love her story with this. I thought they were doing some interesting things with it, but it also bums me out that Jenna Ortega also left the project because I'm a bigger fan of her. So, with all the turmoil, what intrigued me to see is what they would actually end up doing. Everything felt rushed due to these issues, and I'll also admit, I came in minimal expectations here because we're 7 films into a franchise, and by this point, everything's kind of gone off the rails. You're jumping the shark, and Scream is no different, and I'll kind of get into my issues with the franchise later. Let's do some featured notes first. So let's start with our director here, Williamson. He's only directed 2 films so far. The other one was Teaching Mrs. Tingle, which isn't technically a horror film, but I know it's kind of close with some of the elements they have there. I've only ever seen this one, though. So we have 2 co-directors here. The first is going to be Rudy Persico, who has done this for 4 features. I've seen 2, and they're both in genre. The only 2 that they've done in genre as well. So they did the original Strangers, and now this. The other one is Joanne Connolly. I believe she came up with The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. She's been in 8 films, and I've seen 4 for 50%. Not Horseshoe did Jumanji The Next Level, which I have seen. Has 3 in genre. The other ones being Annabelle Comes Home, which I've seen. So everything they've done in horror I've watched now, so 3 for 3, 100%. Then our original writer here is Williamson, which I know I've brought up before. So I've seen everything that he's released. It would be like Screams 1 through 7. He's also credited for The Faculty, and they're going to do a remake of that one. So that's the only one that I'm missing at this time. Then as a writer, he's done 9. I've seen 8 for 88%. I'm just missing Teaching Miss Tingle out of Scream. So outside of seeing like Scream 2, 4, and 7, I've also seen I Know What You Did Last Summer, The Faculty, Sick, and Cursed. And then there's also Busick. He's come up previously where I've seen 6 of his 7 for 85%. I've seen Scream 5, 6, Final Destination Bloodlines, Ready or Not, and Abigail. I'm just missing an upcoming film, Ready or Not 2, Here I Come. Let's then move to the cast. I'll start with Campbell, and she has been in 60 films and 4 shorts. I've seen 9 for 15%. Outside of all the Scream films that she's been in, I've also seen her in Wild Things in the Craft. For horror, she has 10, and I've seen 8 for 80%. I've also seen her in The Dark from 1993. I'm just missing the 2 docs about the Scream films that she is featured in. I'll also credit Cox, who's been in 48 movies. I've seen 12 for 25%. She's been in 3 shorts. Not horror, I've seen Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, The Longest Yard, and Masters of the Universe. Actually, going to be rewatching that here soon, looking at you, the average podcast. She has 9 in genre. I've seen 8 for 88%. Outside of the Scream films, I've seen The Tripper. I'm just missing a doc about Scream. Then last I'll look at May. She's been in 15 works. I've seen 2. Both this year. I'm at 13% of her output. I've seen her in Run, Hide, Fight. Technically, only 2 in genre with this and Let's Scare Julie that are released. Now, she has 1 more called Menace, which isn't released as of yet. All right, then, for this movie here, we start with a couple arriving at the Mocker House from the original film. We have Scott, portrayed by Jimmy Tatro, and Madison by Michelle Randolph. They're the couple. The house has been turned into like a museum of sorts that can be rented out and you can stay there. Now, Scott is an expert on what happened and he's stoked. Madison knows a lot too, but she's not as thrilled. She gets uneasy with some of the things they find in one of the rooms. This also feels exploitative. Now, these 2 are done in by the new Ghostface, who burns it down. That's when we shift over to Sydney. Now, she is married to Mark Evans, portrayed by Mikhail, who is the local chief of police. There's a scene that pays homage to the original film here with her daughter Tatum, portrayed by May, and her boyfriend Ben Brown, portrayed by Reckner. It is through this that we see that they're in a rough patch. That would be Tatum and her mother. Now, Tatum wants more freedom and wants to know more about Sydney's past and everything she's been through. Her mother is trying to shelter her from it and want her to grow up without fear. It is difficult, though, as there is a whole series of films focusing on your trauma. We then get to learn a little bit more about the people in this town. Now, Tatum does theater with her 2 friends, Hannah Thurman, portrayed by Grace, and Chloe by O'Connor. Working the light board are Ben and Lucas Bowden, portrayed by Jermaine. Now, he's a true crime junkie, wanting to start his own podcast, so he's in awe of Sydney. Now, his mother is annoyed by his lack of tact, and she is Jessica, portrayed by Camp. Now, word gets to Sydney about the murders that happened in Woodsboro. She then gets a call from a face from the past that shakes her. So, Ghostface has come to her town. Like the synopsis said, Tatum's friends are the first targets. Sydney and her family also come face to face with this person. Things aren't as they seem, and everybody's a suspect. Sydney also gets help from others who have shared trauma while also dealing with trying to keep her daughter safe despite her wanting to help. So that's how I leave my recap and introduction of the characters. What I want to start is that this feels a little bit like hitting the reset button due to the actor changes. It's not the worst thing to do. The story then is put together, and it does work for like pivoting back to trying to bring in a potential younger lead to carry the franchise if they want to. This does feel a little bit rushed still. I'll then say that it wasn't horrible by any stretch, and it was enjoyable while still having issues. The story works. Feeling like another requel though. The opening uses a recognizable young actor in Tatro. He's not a major star. I've seen him in a good handful of things though. The Mocker House and recreating an early scene, this time with Tatum instead of the mother. This way works to introduce her as well as Ben, especially since this feels like, another passing the torch attempt. And there's also this trial by fire motif. Now, something I appreciated here is that those who have grown up watching the series, I would have been around 10 years old when the original came out. I probably saw it around about there. I did not see it in the theater. My family didn't take me to see this one, but we definitely watched, my sister and I, on VHS. We rented it repeatedly. So Sydney being a mother and needing to protect her children is something that I can connect with, since that's what I was getting at. We truly get to see the growth from a broken teen to a strong woman who is sheltering her daughter now. The pushback from Tatum is good, wanting to know more of the truth of what happened, not the Hollywood horror version. So there's some elements here that I appreciate. Now, this Explorer series characteristics, we have that meta commentary, this time focusing more on the dangers of AI. Interestingly, Lucas is strongly opposed, while tech-savvy Ben is open to its use. A terrifying aspect of AI's potential growth is shown, which is timely. However, the commentary is less focused on the horror genre itself. Mindy, she's back, as portrayed by Brown, and her brother Chad, they're Mindy and Chad Meeks Martin. He's portrayed by Gooding. There's a funny moment where he mocks her characteristic info dump, suggesting that the roles will continue. There's also a really great thing here with Mindy as well as Gail, be portrayed by Courtney Cox, and how there's almost like another passing the torch there that I'm all for. So let's shift over here to my biggest issues, and it takes a bit too much from Halloween and previous Scream films. That's not necessarily an issue, though. Like the opening scene with Tatum, her boyfriend and her mother, that was cute. It's fun to introduce the younger two and give us Sydney. It is a later thing that made me start to roll my eyes as we kind of get deeper in this. It feels like there's a lot of like member berries. And there's also my biggest issue with this franchise is the plot armor. Too many characters get attacked, and then the punch is pulled for potential future films. I know some people think there's some charm there, and they love that. It just annoys me to where I can never get fully behind this franchise. Those lack of stakes make my interest wane. So that should be enough for the story. Let's go over to shift gears here and how I judge slasher films. They either need to have memorable characters or good kills. The returning cast, they excel. Notably, Campbell is Sydney with her maternal instinct stuff right there. I like that whole subplot. May, initially underdeveloped, shows good growth as the lead. Mikhail is enjoyable as this like father, police officer. Grace, Jermaine, O'Connor, Reckner, they work as Tatum's friend group. Bringing back Brown and Gooding was effective. I like their characters. Camp and Embry are positive additions in my opinion. Not everything fully works with them, but the acting for me, I thought it was pretty strong overall. I did want to have another subsection here to bring up all the cameos. Cox feels unnecessary, only to serve a role here with Sydney and, passing the torch to the twins. That's creative. This is the final film that they make. If not, it doesn't truly make sense with some of the stuff they do there. It's also, I'm glad to see, what they kind of did here with Scott Foley, Matthew Lillard, David Arquette, and Laurie Metcalf. All that is left then would be the other half of the equation for slasher films, which is filmmaking. The film, this one is well executed with good cinematography and framing. Williamson effectively builds tension, though he occasionally borrows from other films. So this is appropriately brutal at times when we show like blood and the gore that falls into this. There was one instance of notable CGI, but otherwise the music and sound design, including reoccurring themes and selections, were effective. And I'm including, those computer effects. The scene that they did it with there, I don't know if there's another way you could do that practically. But then Roger L. Jackson's iconic voice work is a highlight as well. Then let's kind of jump over here to do a little bit of trivia before I end out this review. As it sounds like Cox and Jackson are the only two returning actors who have appeared in every Scream film. This is the first film that was directed by Williamson in this series. Jackson returns as a Ghostface voice, making him involved in all 7 films here. Williamson convinced Campbell to consider to return, and she convinced him to direct. Now, there's also some stuff here where Sydney had mentioned that her husband's name was Mark. There was supposed to be Patrick Dempsey was supposed to come back in this one. It sounds like there were some scheduling issues as to why he didn't, so that's kind of a little bit of a bummer there. According to Skeet Ulrich, the idea for Sam Carpenter, protagonist of the previous 2 movies, was embrace her inner darkness for the finale of this trilogy. That obviously fell through with some of the issues that happened there. The first day of shooting was on January 7th, 2025, and the first scene that they did was in a bar-restaurant sequence here. May got the role of Sydney's daughter on her 24th birthday. There's not a whole lot of stuff here that's all that great. This would be the 3rd Scream film not to be directed by Craven, R.I.P. This was originally using the Mocker residence and can be in fact booked for overnight stay event tours. It's the Spring Hill Estate Mansion is located in Tomales, California. Yeah, there's some of this other stuff here. There's a lot of stuff where people are just spoiling stuff and... Alright, well, that's all I'm going to do there. For not a lot of great stuff, and I don't want to do some of the spoiler ones. But so in conclusion, despite some production turmoil and the feeling of being rushed, this manages to deliver a satisfying, albeit familiar, requel experience. It succeeds most in its emotional core, showcasing Sydney's journey into motherhood and the need to protect the next generation, a theme that resonates well with longtime fans. While suffering from noticeable plot armor and borrowing heavily from its predecessors, this boasts a solid ensemble cast, effective tension building, and relevant meta commentary on AI. It serves as a decent pivotal point, attempting to pass the torch while honoring the past, ultimately make it an enjoyable watch while this being, this deep into the franchise, even if it falls short of truly innovative horror. So my rating here, I gave this one a 6 out of 10. This is probably my least favorite now in the series, but like I said, we're 7 films in, so what are we doing here? So I'm not going to do a spoiler section since this is so new and everything like that, so what I'm going to go ahead and do though is get you over to one last break before I close out the show.
Listen, here's the truth. If it's not something you love to do, automation is mandatory. You didn't start your podcast to spend hours editing clips. You started it to create, connect, and grow your audience. But here's the problem. Every other platform works with video podcasts, and manual editing eats up your most valuable asset, your time. That's where Opus Clip changes everything. Upload your video, and Opus Clip will automatically find the gold nugget moments auto-clip the captions for the best parts. Perfect for TikTok, Reels, and Shorts. 1 hour-long episode becomes 10, 20, even 30 viral-ready clips in minutes. The tool even predicts each clip's viral potential, so you know exactly what to post. No more tenuous editing, no more wasted hours, just you staying in the place that you love to be, creating content that matters. Head to podnationopus.com for your free trial and get back to doing what you do best. Stop editing and start creating now.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with Out of This World award-winning podcast found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, Out of This World.
And welcome back. So if you'd like to send me any sort of feedback, anything you want read on the show, or any screener requests, anything like that, you can send those to journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. If you'd like to read any of my written reviews or see any of the old past podcast episodes, all of that is being stored over at Journey with a Cinephile. That is my blog, and that's going to be horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to follow me and become friends on Facebook, it's going to be David Garrett Jr. is my name over on there. There's going to be a link in the show notes. And then if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, it's going to be Buckeye from Mish. And then if you'd like to follow my Letterboxd page where I have all of my reviews, whether that is going to be horror or non-horror, that's going to be David OSU is my name on that. Instagram and Threads, I'm David OSU87. Over on my personal Instagram page, you might see some of my family stuff every now and then whenever I remember to post something. My wife is much better at it than I am. But then if you'd like to follow the Journey with a Cinephile Instagram, that's going to be Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. And then also direct you, if you'd like, to the Discord channel. That's going to be the Nightclub Discord, but I have a page over there. And there's also some other great pages of other shows and them kind of messing around and everything like that. Do highly recommend if you want to go ahead and check that out. And then the last thing I'll actually say here, if you would like to listen to the show a day early, this is always going to be streaming over there on the Pod Nation TV app. So I will have, once again, a link in the show notes for that if that is something that you're interested in. So, yeah, there's some great stuff here. There's some great shows on some of these other networks and stuff. I highly recommend checking them out. And for my next episode, we are going to do a shifting a little bit here. This is going to end up being here. St. Patrick's Day is going to be the theme. I'd have to double check. I mean, looking just at how many seasons I've been doing, this is probably going to be the 7th time doing that. I'll double check that and have that in the intro for you next. I probably should have done it last time. Actually, if I keep stalling here long enough, I think I could actually figure this out. But let's see how things work out here. And yes, it's going to be number 7 of doing these. So, since I've already watched all the Leprechaun films, what I'm going to do here is, originally I was going to do a double feature of Irish horror films, but instead I'm going to do from the past year. I believe this is from 1986. I need to double check that as well. If it's not 76, it's one of those 2 years. But it's going to be The Fantanist. I think it might be how you say that. I'll double check that as well to figure out the pronunciation. But then I'm actually going to be pairing this up. I went to the Gateway Film Center on opening night to see The Bride, the new Maggie Gyllenhaal film. And so this I'm doing here is my double feature is going to be that Jessie Buckley is Irish born. So that's going to be how I'm going to do this St. Patrick's Day episode. And then for Scouring Through the Sixes, my rewatch here is going to be Look What Happened to Rosemary's Baby. And then I have a couple screeners here that I'm going to knock out, and I'll figure out other things. And since there's also going to be a Friday the 13th, I'm going to check out the original. I believe there's a commentary track. If not, I'll skip to the next one that does, or I might just rewatch Friday the 13th. We'll figure that out. So that's all I have here then for this outro, except saying, that wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening, and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending